Today on the Homegrown Hunter TV, we're headed back westbound to Wisconsin for the 13-hour drive, where Matt and I are going to try our hand out again for doe management, but this time we're taking the smoke poles. Homegrown Hunter TV has been brought to you by Rack Stacker Brand Products, Canada's leading big game attractants company. Campbellford Chrysler, a small town dealer with a huge inventory. And Huckabones Equipment, Ottawa Valley's Kubota dealer. And these other fine sponsors. In early October, we were here in Wisconsin with good friends Mike and Andrea Kohnke. We were there on a doe mission and had a hard time during archery season, so they had asked us to come back to what they call the T-zone.
Well, it's December 7th, and we're in hunting season here in this part of Wisconsin that's called the T-zone. It's a 100% antlerless only hunt. And you can use any weapon of choice. The only rules are you gotta wear orange, just like the rest of the gun season, but you can use a bow, you can use whatever. It doesn't matter as long as you only shoot does and have tags for those. So we're actually on the field edge where I seen a bunch of deer come out last night. I was able to take a doe last night about 200 yards behind me, and when I came out, there's a bunch of deer between a winter wheat field that is right next to me over here, and then we got a pick cornfield right next to us. And when I walked in, there was actually like 8 or 9 does right up next to the road that were bedded in the pines behind me. So all we need is for the deer to start coming out. Last night they started moving through at about 4 o'clock, so we got a little time yet, I think, before they hit the field. But you never know with this weather. It's been brutal cold all day with the wind chill, so stand by. Let's see if we can do our part with this doe management hunt. Literally at the same exact time it happened yesterday. At the last second, I caught a glimpse. The stand I actually shot it. The doeing last night is 100 yards behind me, and the deer really funneled this edge coming out to this winter wheat field. It was hard with the bow, and I thought for a second they were coming to this corner, but the whole group turned right at the last second and literally went right in. So it was a 100-yard shot. I don't even know what to say. I looked down, there was literally 2 minutes. There was 2 minutes of shooting light left when I realized I was an adult doe. It was actually 2 adult does. And 100-yard shot, They came out the bottom. And both my deer are laying 30 yards apart. I got 2 does down, 1 night. We're tagged out unless I buy more tags. I'm done. No more deer out here. I got my quota, so I'm very happy. Yeah. This would be the first doe I shot. So, but I'm very, very happy about this. I'm glad to have 2 does down in 1 night. It's been a long time since I've actually pulled the trigger on the old Optima, but we did a great job and couldn't be happier. So we're gonna get these deer cleaned up and headed back and get back by Steve and Matt and see what they shot, because I believe they shot one tonight too.
You shot it right on the nose.
Not right on the nose.
This season that's in Wisconsin right now is actually called the T-Zone, and it is a strict doe-only hunt. It's for 4 days, but you can use any weapon of choice as long as you got tags. A couple does out of the herd right now is not going to hurt us. There's way too many the way it is right now. It's actually really hard to get a good buck to come in because there's no competition. So a couple out of the area, and I heard the neighbors shoot tonight too, so that's a couple more. And a couple of friends of mine that are in town too, they decided to shoot one tonight. But we got a few more days. We'll see how many more we can get, but as of this property, we're going to take off of this one and go on to the next and try to get a couple more.
There was no messing around the first evening with Mike hunting. He was able to take 2 nice does off of a winter wheat field that he had seen deer at the night before. We had all chose to use smoke poles during the hunt this time. I chose to use my Thompson Center 50 cal. I was shooting a 250 grain Hornady Savage slug with 100 grains of white hot powder. This combination was great for me and I've used it for years, so I knew that I would have plenty of success this hunt. The first evening, Matt and I were sitting about 200 yards apart of each other. I was actually over a food plot in the thick bush facing westbound with the wind in my face, while Matt was about 200 yards north of me over a cut cornfield. He had gotten some early action from turkeys that were moseying through the cornfield in the area, giving him something to watch as the sun set for the night. It was starting to get dark when I finally seen a deer behind me. I had to do some shuffling around as I didn't expect him to come from that area. It turned out that it was a yearling buck that was near a pond. He did end up catching my wind slightly, but wasn't spooked too bad, so I decided to wait him out and see if it had a girlfriend that might have been in the area. Meanwhile, at the same time, Matt was texting me with some comments that he had had a doe and a fawn coming into him that he was going to try and take a poke at. There we go. That's the doe I've been waiting for. I cocked the hammer and settled in to take the shot. Oops, sorry, buddy. I ended up spooking Matt's deer with my gunshot, and he didn't end up having a chance to shoot. We got the deer down to Mike's parents' place the next morning to get them all cleaned up. We worked as a group to get the 3 deer butchered as quick as possible so that we could get out the second day. If we had worked quickly throughout the afternoon butchering the deer, we were able to get out for the second day's hunt, as we had more tags to fill and more tags available if we wanted. I was using a knife called the Stein bit. It's made by Helle Knives. The Stein bit is actually a fillet knife for fish. I like it because it does work really well for cleaning big game meat as well. Now, I've been asked lots before if crossing the border into Canada is a pain, but in fact it's not. The best thing you can do when you're coming into Canada is make sure that you remove all the bones from the animal. This way it'll save you any troubles in crossing the border. While we were at Mike's house prepping the meat for the freezer, Mike's little girl Reese was making Christmas snacks in the kitchen. Wow, were they ever good. Great energy to be heading back into the stand in the cold too. Being well fed and ready to go, we had loaded up the truck and headed in for the second day of our doe management hunt in Wisconsin. Right at the last second, Matt was able to get a shot off at a doe that was right under his stand. We believe this was the doe that I spooked the night before when I pulled the trigger on my deer. He got elbow deep in cleanup, and we headed back to the house to get warm. The central Wisconsin deer population is booming right now, with good food sources available in mild winters. In order to keep the population in check, Matt and I are going out for the third evening to try and shoot ourselves some does. We got in some snow, and we're going to be sitting together at the pinch point this time. The amount of tracks crossing the road to where we were headed was very promising.
He doesn't have his tea. Freaking cold. He's getting the sniffles. The deer are about 400 or 500 yards over in a destination food source. And they're filtering back through the staging area and coming back to this big, thick bedding area that we have here to our left. Got a fresh blanket of snow last night. Should make it pretty easy to see them. Got 6 more deer tags to fill before we go.
And now, this week's Cut to the Chase segment brought to you by Rack Stacker.
Don't be too concerned about harvesting an adult doe that has fawns by her side, particularly if it's during the rifle season across the whitetails range. Almost every season in the whitetails range, even the early bow seasons, the fawns are at least 45 to 60 days old. Research has shown over and over that at 60 days, they're going to survive at near identical rates with or without their mother. They surprise you. Another secondary benefit potentially is if you harvest a doe that has button bucks at her side, not doe fawns, but male fawns, there's a higher probability of those buck fawns staying in your area because there's a natural process in deer biology called dispersal, where a vast majority of young male deer don't grow up where they're born. They disperse to a new area and set up a new home range. The research has shown clearly that if you kill the mother before that dispersal event occurs, because she often triggers it, she kicks those young bucks out of her home area, if you will. If you kill that doe before that occurs, you can actually stack bucks and still catch some buck fawns from your neighbors.
However, we didn't have any luck that morning, but Matt had a good doe step out into a winter wheat field that he had been hunting that evening on a farm that we had access to. After he had identified her as a mature doe, he made her happen.
She got it right there.
Mike met up with him after the hunt, and she hadn't been too far away.
Yeah, right here.
Doe number 5 was on the ground, and the landowners couldn't be happier. This time around, Matt and I were headed home with a freezer full of meat that will feed our families for the year. Caleb, Mike's little nephew, was even joining in on the cleanup part in preparation for the deer that day. It's time like these that allow us to soak up everything that Mother Nature has to offer. As much as we are shooting a bunch of deer, and this sport is exciting, we also need to respect the fact that deer numbers need to be balanced. Shooting bucks is fun, but it's certainly not what it's all about to us. It's also about the relationships that we build. Let's have Brian explain more about the diversity of whitetails.
White-tailed deer is the most numerous big game animal in the world. It also occupies a greater diversity of habitats than any other species on the planet. So the whitetail is very unique. Scientists have documented upwards of 30 different subspecies of the whitetail. But what's interesting there, and I'm a bit of a critic of that many different, because most of those were done in the 70s and early 80s before the advent of DNA technology. So they looked at things like antler differences or coat color differences or body size differences. And they found that there were some differences across the range. A Canadian hunter would realize that a 300-pound animal is not uncommon in good habitats in Canada. You go to South Florida, 80 pounds dripping wet on a 4.5-year-old buck sometimes, so huge variation. So we know there's some differences, but we haven't adequately, in my opinion, assessed the different genotypes, in other words, true subspecies based at the DNA level. And what work has been done, particularly in the States, where we had to use a lot of deer from other places to restock all of the 50 or 42 or 3 U.S. states. So we moved deer from my home state of Georgia now, from Wisconsin, from Texas, and a number of different places to create what we have now. The research that has been done, however, has shown that most of those effects have been watered out over time, that the new genotype is a blend. Much like America, we're a blend of a lot of cultures. And so I suspect that with the exception of places like Canada where you have the Borealis subspecies that's remained the Borealis subspecies, you would in most cases have a fairly pure subspecies there, in my opinion, versus some areas of the States that may have 5, 6, 7 different species or subspecies that were used for restocking. The key though, in most cases, the differences you see are just the individual differences among deer, just as there's a lot of differences among humans with hair color, size, body weight. We vary a lot because we're a hodgepodge. Deer do, even in areas where they're genetically fairly pure.
Hey folks, today we're going to talk about the felling sights on a chainsaw. Most consumers out there, when they go to purchase a saw, they don't realize what these lines on the side of the saw and the top of the saw are for. They are the felling sights, and they aid you in lining up your direction of fall when you're making your notch to drop a tree. The lines are located on the top of the saw here, and you use the top of the saw sight line when making your 70-degree angle notch, part of the notch. And then you also have the lines on the side here that you use to line up the direction of fall for the bottom portion of the notch, the 90-degree cut. So these lines help you to determine where you want that tree to fall and help you direct where you want that tree to fall.
So we came down to Wisconsin for a week for what they called T-Zone. It's a, what is it, 4 days?
It's a 4-day doe-only hunt. Any weapon of choice. And literally it's just to manage the deer herd. We have a pile of deer here. We're in the central farm area of Wisconsin, and big farms, a lot of private land. So our numbers are really high, and we got to really manage the buck to doe ratio. So having you guys come down to fill all your extra tags is much needed, and it also gets you a lot of meat in the freezer.
Yeah, I was amazed when Steve said that we had 6 tags apiece to fill, and it's different from Ontario because we have 1 tag, shoot your doe, shoot your buck, you're done.
It's been great. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, glad to have you and Steve here. It's awesome, and I just really love the fact that we're starting to get back on track with the management that we need to do around here, because it's getting out of line.
Well, you definitely need it when we're seeing up to 15 does a night.
We're filling freezers. We're doing a great thing with doe management, which you guys don't get to do, but you know, hopefully you guys can come back down next year and help us get the numbers down even better in control than what they are now.
Bloopers.
Should I, Caleb, go get me a fake beard or something. I need to blend in a little. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Cassidy, your co-host of Homegrown Hunter TV.